Chapter 6. How to become fluent in physical touch. Love language number 5. As a kid, how often did you play touch football in your neighborhood, arm wrestle your dad, thumb wrestle your brother, play tag at recess, dole out noogies, wet willies, wrist burns, and Hertz donuts, play Marco Polo in a swimming pool? For many guys, physical touch is a huge part of growing up. Left to their own devices, boys can make contact sports out of any game, activity, or car ride. As we get older, we're taught to respect other people's personal space and keep our hands to ourselves. Aside from handshakes, high fives, and the occasional side hug, our interpersonal interaction as adults is largely contact-free. We touch no one, and no one touches us. Sometimes that hands-off approach extends to marriage, too. After the honeymoon period, when the newlyweds can't get enough of each other, many couples settle into a pattern of ever-ceasing physical distance. The demands of a busy world, as well as any number of emotional issues, conspire to keep husband and wife at arm's length from each other. For roughly 4/5 of married people, that distance may not seem like a glaring problem. That number assumes a relatively equal distribution of primary love language among the general population. Their love tanks are filled by words of affirmation, quality time, gift-giving, or acts of service. They may enjoy physical touch, but they don't need it to feel loved or cared for. Their emotional well-being isn't tied to it. This chapter is dedicated to the other 20%, the spouses whose primary love language is physical touch. The touchables. If you or your wife is a foodie, chances are you've heard of super tasters, people whose sense of taste is so acute that they experience food differently than most other people do. For a super taster, sugar is sweeter, sodium is saltier, fat is creamier, and bitterness is unbearable. Some super tasters can detect even the slightest differences in the fat content of milk and other foods. The jury is out as to whether super tasting abilities are a blessing or a curse. On the plus side, with their enhanced taste buds, super tasters can isolate and enjoy the many ingredients that go into their favorite foods. Super tasters make excellent food critics. On the minus side, super tasters are repulsed by certain foods, including healthy dark green vegetables that other people enjoy. If your wife's primary love language is physical touch, think of her as a super toucher. She can sense love and affection, among other things, in the slightest arm squeeze or back caress. Physical contact that wouldn't even register with most people has the potential to thrill her, change her mood, brighten her day, and most importantly, make her feel loved and cared for. The intensity of her tactile experience plays a large role in her relationships. The closer she is to someone, whether it's a friend or a family member, the more she enjoys physical touch with that person. A bear hug with her brother, a kiss on the cheek from her mother, an arm around her shoulder from her best friend. Likewise, the withholding of physical touch by those closest to her has the potential to cause her more pain and anxiety than most non-native speakers of her love language can imagine. From her perspective, physical touch can make or break a relationship. It can communicate love or hate. Physical abuse is always wrong and detrimental to anyone, but it is particularly devastating to someone whose primary love language is physical touch. A tender hug communicates love and affection to most people, but it shouts love and affection to those who speak physical touch. The thought process of such a person goes like this: whatever there is of me resides in my body. To touch my body is to touch me. To withdraw from my body is to distance yourself from me emotionally. Even people who speak other love languages can understand that thinking to a certain degree. Whether we realize it or not, most of us adhere to certain physical touch expectations in our culture. To deviate from them is to invite scrutiny and misunderstanding. How many times a week do you shake hands with clients, fellow church members, golf partners, and casual acquaintances? In our culture, shaking hands is a way of communicating openness and friendliness to another person. If you extend your hand to someone and he leaves you hanging by refusing to shake it, you'll likely assume one of three things. The guy is a raging jerk. He has no interest in getting to know you, and things are not right in your relationship. Your reaction to the snub will depend on who's doing the snubbing. If it's an opponent you just beat in a pickup basketball game, you probably won't give it a second thought. If it's your boss, you may start to panic, wondering what you've done wrong and when the hammer's going to drop. And so it goes for the wife who speaks physical touch as a primary love language. When that touch isn't forthcoming, she takes it personally. She may lose self-esteem. She may worry about the state of her friendships and relationships. She may feel lonely even when she's surrounded by friends and loved ones. As her husband, her primary source of love and affirmation, the responsibility for giving her the physical touch she desires is yours. Some might call that pressure. You can choose to look at it as a challenge and an opportunity. Taking stock. If your kids or your friends' kids or your nieces or nephews play high school sports, you may be familiar with baseline concussion tests. If not, here's how they work. Before the season starts, the athlete takes a computer-based test that measures reaction time, memory capacity, speed of mental processing, and executive functioning of the brain. The test serves as a document of how the athlete's brain works when it's healthy. If the athlete suffers a concussion during the season, doctors can then re-administer the test and compare the new results with the baseline test. That point of comparison allows them to determine where damage has been done so they can plan their treatment accordingly. That same principle, in reverse, can be applied to learning your wife's love language. If you're serious about becoming fluent in physical touch, you may want to consider conducting a baseline test of your current physical touch relationship with your wife. At the end of a typical weekday, after your wife has gone to bed, do a mental review of your physical interaction with her that day. Write down every time you kissed her, gave her a hug, held her hand, put your arm around her, initiated foot-to-foot contact under the table, grabbed her around her waist, gave her a high five, playfully wrestled with her, rubbed her shoulders, stroked her hair, caressed her back. Any other meaningful, purposeful, affectionate physical contact with her. Be as precise and comprehensive as you can in compiling your list. Resist the urge to inflate the numbers to make yourself look better. Remember, you're just looking for baseline figures, points of comparison to use later. Besides, there's no reason for anyone but you to see your list. Once you have a fairly concrete idea of how much physical touch you provide to your wife on a given day, you can begin looking for areas in which you can do better. For example, if you find there are one or two types of touches that you go to over and over again, you might look at some other types of touches that are underrepresented on your list and consider trying them more often. Crunch your numbers, set your goals, and plan your strategy. Once your strategy is in place, mark some dates in your calendar for additional self-evaluations to check your progress. Compare them to your baseline figures to see where you're improving and where you need more improvement. Nice touch. Atomically speaking, physical touch may be the easiest love language of all to begin learning. The human body was designed with touch receptors throughout. You could touch your wife lovingly almost anywhere on her body, theoretically. In reality, not all touches are created equal. Some will bring more pleasure to her than others. Your best instructor is the one being touched. Of course, in this case, your wife. After all, she's the one you're seeking to love. She knows best what she perceives as a loving touch. Don't insist on touching her in your way and in your time. Learn to speak her love dialect. Like it or not, your wife may find some touches uncomfortable or irritating. To continue using those touches is to communicate the opposite of love, to suggest that you're not sensitive to her needs and that you care little about her perceptions of what's pleasant. The fact that a certain kind of touch brings pleasure to you doesn't mean it will or should bring pleasure to your wife. Some love touches are explicit and demand your full attention. Sexual foreplay and intercourse would certainly fall into this category. More on these later. A sensual back rub would also qualify. Explicit love touches usually involve more time and effort on your part, not only where the actual touching is concerned, but also in preparing and understanding how to communicate love to your wife in that way. If a back massage communicates love loudly to your wife, then any time, money, and energy you spend in learning to be a good masseur will be well invested. Other love touches are more intricate and require only a moment. These would include putting your hand on your wife's shoulder as you pour her a cup of coffee, or rubbing your body against hers as you pass in the kitchen. Intricate love touches require little time, but much thought, especially if physical touch is not your primary love language and you didn't grow up in a touching family. Sitting close to each other as you watch your favorite TV show requires no additional time, but it may communicate your love loudly. Touching your wife as you walk through the room when she's sitting takes only a moment. Touching each other when you leave the house and again when you return may involve only a brief kiss or hug, but it will speak volume to your wife. Once you discover that physical touch is the primary love language of your wife, you're limited only by your imagination when it comes to expressing love. Brainstorming new ways and places to touch can be an exciting challenge. If you've never been an under-the-table toucher in the past, you may find that secretive contact adds a spark to your dining out. If you're not accustomed to holding hands in public, you may find that you can fill your wife's emotional love tank simply by strolling through a parking lot, hand in hand. If you don't normally kiss as soon as you get into the car together, you may find that it greatly enhances your travels. Hugging your wife before she goes shopping not only expresses love, but it may bring her home sooner. Try new touches in new places and let your wife give you feedback on whether she finds it pleasurable. Remember, she has the final word. You are learning to speak her love language. a category unto itself. Surely, a red-blooded, testosterone-driven man can be forgiven for smiling slyly when he discovers that his wife experiences love language primarily through physical touch. That's like hitting the love language lottery, isn't it? After all, physical touch does include sex, right? Right? Perhaps. Not necessarily. It depends on your wife. Some wives may indeed find emotional fulfillment from the physical intimacy of lovemaking. Other wives may put sex in a separate category from other kinds of physical touch. Either way, it's important to remember whose needs are in focus here. The purpose of becoming fluent in the language of physical touch is not to get your own desires met, but to make your wife feel genuinely loved and cared for. If she senses that your efforts at physical touch are merely preludes to sex, ways to get her in the mood, she may start to resent them. And in the process, you'll lose some credibility. Your wife needs to know that your aim is true, your intentions are noble, and your efforts are directed at her. If that means removing sex from the love language equation, so be it. The two of you can address your physical intimacy in another setting. There are 3 points we must reiterate in the context of physical touch and sex. The first involves appropriate and inappropriate touching. Remember, it's your wife who draws the line. If she's uncomfortable with touching that borders on groping, she should feel free to tell you so. That way, you can adjust your actions accordingly. Her feelings must be respected. Second, the fact that your wife's reaction to physical touch is so fraught with meaning means that any betrayal to that area will be devastating to her, more so than it might be for someone else. Marriage counselors' files are filled with records of husbands and wives who are grappling with the emotional trauma of an unfaithful spouse. That trauma, however, is compounded for the individual whose primary love language is physical touch. The idea of the love for which she belongs being given to another person is almost too much to bear. Her emotional tank is not only drained, it is exploded. Only massive repairs can fix the damage. Third, if sexual intercourse is indeed your wife's primary dialect, nothing should stop you from becoming the best lover you can possibly be for her. The more you read about it and discuss the art of sexual lovemaking, the more you will improve your ability to express love in that way. When it's needed most. If physical touch is important under normal circumstances, it is absolutely essential in times of crisis. Even people who don't speak physical touch as their primary love language almost instinctively cling to one another in times of emergency, loss, and upheaval. The more serious the situation, the more likely we are to hug or clasp hands. That's a testament to the power of physical touch to communicate love. In a time of crisis, more than anything, we need to feel loved. We cannot always change events, but we can survive if we feel loved. All marriages will experience crisis. Some can be anticipated, others can't. The death of parents is inevitable. Automobile accidents injure and kill thousands every year. Disease is no respecter of persons. Disappointments are a part of life. The most important thing you can do for your wife in times of crisis is to love her. If her primary love language is physical touch, nothing is more important than holding her as she cries. Your words may mean little, but your physical touch will communicate that you care. A crisis provides a unique opportunity for expressing love. It's vital that you seize the opportunity. Your tender touches will be remembered long after the crisis has passed. Your failure to touch may never be forgotten. Physical Touch Phrase Book. Think of this as a starter's guide or an emergency resource for communicating in the love language of physical touch. If you're stuck for an idea of how to show tactile love to your wife, try one of these suggestions. Make touching your wife a normal part of your routine. Run your fingers through her hair while she's reading. Touch her shoulders as she works in the kitchen. Even the smallest acts can build intimacy over time. Make a point of hugging and kissing your wife when you say goodbye in the morning, when you come home in the evening, and before you go to bed at night. It's easy to let these rituals slide, particularly when you've been married for a while. Change your usual patterns and routines to encourage more physical contact between you and your wife. If each of you has a special chair, move them to within arm's length of each other. Switch sides of the bed. The awkwardness of the new arrangement is likely to lead to unexpected touching opportunities. If the two of you normally sit across from each other in a restaurant, next time get a booth and sit side by side. If you usually sit side by side, next time sit across from each other and engage in a little foot play under the table. Set aside an evening for some touch experiments to determine where your wife most likes to be touched. As you move from spot to spot, ask her to give you a thumbs up, a thumbs down, or an indifferent thumb sideways to indicate her reaction. Make a mental note of the spots that get a thumbs up. Check out websites, DVDs, and books that teach various techniques of body massage. Experiment to see which method your wife enjoys most. Think back to your early dates and recall the thrill of physical touch that perhaps you now take for granted. The next time you're alone with your wife, try to rekindle some of that original excitement. The next time you shop for your wife, look for things that will appeal to her tactile nature. Things that are pleasant to touch, such as a cashmere sweater, a plush throw pillow, or warm, fuzzy slippers. The next time she's sick, remember the healing power of touch. When her head hurts, offer to rub her neck and temples. When she's suffering a cold or flu, frequently rub her forehead. If you have kids, train them to show love for mom through physical touch. Make it a tradition in your household for the family to hold hands during prayer. The more often you model physically affirming behavior toward your wife, the more likely it is your kids will follow your example. For a designated period of time, communicate with your wife using only physical touch. Don't say anything as you shower her with physical attention. When she's facing away from you in bed, write short messages on her back and see if she can tell what you're writing. For example, "I adore you" will get a much better reaction than "time to vacuum."